Alright people, happy Thursday. So this video is a pretty straightforward one that I just want to give you a few examples because some people tend to misunderstand on certain elements as well, especially when, if I ask you right now, what is your goal for the LP provision, liquidity pool provision? Alright, and basically you have two answers. You either want to be making yield, which is cash flow, and you don't care about the LP, impermanent loss, IL, LP, and or the second answer that is a possibility is to avoid the impermanent loss while participating in DeFi pools. So the sub question would be, for this main question of what is your goal, is do you aim to build cash flow or avoid impermanent loss? Like, do you care about impermanent loss on your positions? This is the main sub question to answer. All right, just ask yourself, if you deployed into the liquidity pools right now, do you care about the ratios of what you're gonna be getting upon withdrawal? Do you constantly monitor the position value rather than the earnings of the yield, etc.? And do you aim to build cash flow? And do you aim, and the main goal for you is to use your cryptos to generate you income, additional cash flow, right? And you really don't care about the ratios that you will get upon withdrawal. So if you deposited, for example, $10,000 worth of Ethereum or Solana, and your goal is to build cash flow, to leave that money, leave that 10K in the pool, use it, rebalance it, basically use the money to generate yield that you are constantly harvesting, using somewhere else, spending, reinvesting, compounding, doesn't matter. But you don't care too much about that 10K. It's not like you try to maximize the protection of the 10K and earn yield at the same time. If you do, then it's a completely different story, which is, I'm gonna explain that in a minute. So this is the main element, okay? And moving forward, because if your answer is yes about the cash flow, then there is nothing much to say. All is good and you can deploy into LPs, no worries. So for example, what I mean by that is, if you have some capital, some cryptos, USDC, maybe you got some USDC right now and you are planning to deploy into the LPs. So just think about it for yourself. The amount that you deployed into the pool, do you care about it very deeply? Do you feel extremely protective about that amount? Or you deployed it and your aim is to generate as much cash flow, predictable, stable cash flow from that amount, and you don't care if you get more Solanas, less Solanas at the end of the day upon withdrawal of the pool. If you deployed $10,000 worth of Solanas and you withdraw $7,000 worth of USDC and $3,000 worth of Solanas, is it a problem for you? If not, then there is nothing to worry about in terms of the impermanent loss, because the core principle is to understand that when the moment you deploy into the liquidity pool and the price of the asset starts to move, your deposit ratio will change. If you deployed 100% of Solanas and the price is moving up, you will be getting out of Solana into USDC. If you deployed only USDCs and the price is going down, you will be converted to Solana. So essentially you will be buying Solanas. Are you okay with that? If you deployed 10K into the pool, USDC, and then something happened, a few months went by, whatever, you withdraw the same 10K but in Solanas, is it good or bad for you? Maybe you withdraw 8K in Solanas, but you generated 3K in yield, for example. Is it okay or is it not? I mean, what is your relationship with the amount that you are deploying? And if you really care about the deployed amount and you try to protect it as much as possible, meaning that you really care about the impermanent loss, you don't want to be losing any value or ratio, especially ratio, because value you're going to be losing anyway. If you would be holding your Solanas in wallet, you will, and the price of Solana is going down, you would lose value anyway. If Solana is going up, then you would profit from simply holding it, right? But if you deploy into the LPs, both of the scenarios will have a different impact. You will be slowly getting out of Solana to USDC, or getting converted back to Solana, plus you earn the yield. So the core question is, do you have your cryptos for cash flow generation in DeFi, or you want to protect the underlying asset as much as possible? So if your goal is to avoid impermanent loss as much as possible, then you should consider the following strategy, okay? Leave your main assets as collateral and borrow against it. This way, you will be deploying into the pools less amount, but you will be maintaining 100% exposure to that asset, the same as you would hold it in wallet. So then you want to be using borrowed capital to deploy into the LPs, and then use part of the yield generated to repay the debt, and another part to keep for reinvestments or spending. Okay, it's up to you. I mean, the management is up to you anyway. You can use all the yield to spending, reinvestments, whatever, because you can repay the loan using the collateral at any time, whatever it may be. All right. So this way, you are keeping the exposure to the main asset, to the underlying asset, at 100% by borrowing against them. Because if the value of your Solanas or Ethereum, Bitcoin, doesn't matter, goes up, you get to keep the upside. Because let's say you deployed 100 Solanas into the lending protocol and borrowed a few thousand USDC. Your Solanas are your Solanas. And if Solana is going up, the value of your collateral is also going up, so you keep all the upside, right? And then you use the borrowed capital to deploy into different LPs. It could be the same Solana USDC, this could be on other chain, other pool, doesn't matter, but you use that borrowed capital to generate cash flow without touching and selling and messing the ratio of the underlying asset. This is extremely simple but important, because some people, they don't want to be losing or messing around their underlying asset. Because I know personally some people, they've been buying Bitcoin, for example, for many years, every single month, right? Buying and buying and buying Bitcoin. And now if they want to participate in DeFi, right, and deploy into the LPs, they have two options. They can either sell some of their Bitcoin, they can use additional money, or they can deploy Bitcoin itself into the pools, or ETH or Solana, doesn't matter, right? But they want to keep the assets. They don't want to be exiting the Solana or ETH or Bitcoin at random USDC prices. They don't want to be messing around with the deposit ratios. So this is avoiding impermanent loss and avoiding messing around with the underlying asset. In this case, and if that's your goal, is you should keep your Bitcoins, ETH, Solana, so it doesn't matter, whatever you have, like the main assets, main holdings, as collateral. Don't touch them, don't sell them, borrow against them, and use the borrowed money to deploy into the LPs, mess around, have the cash flow, build whatever, do whatever in DeFi, right? Without touching, because anytime you repay the debt, you get back all of your collateral, no matter the value, right? And the same thing is, even if you would, for example, hold Solanas in your wallet, and if it goes down or up, you keep the upside and the downside. The same applies to the your Solanas, ETH, whatever, being as collateral. The same thing, because you are not selling a single one of your Solanas, ETH, Bitcoin, doesn't matter, for the liquidity provision. And if this does not apply to you, if your goal is to just build cash flow, and because holding crypto can generate you cash flow, and you don't care whether you get back Solana's USDC in whatever ratio, 80-20, 70-30, 50-50, 100%, one asset or another, it doesn't matter to you, then there is no point to borrow against them. You can just deploy the assets itself. So the only way that you have to be extremely careful, right, when doing that, which is one crucial element, you want to be checking between multiple protocols for the best borrowing costs. Because when you leave some assets as collateral, in most cases it's going to be big assets like Solana, like Sui, like ETH, Bitcoin, AVAX, doesn't matter. But I mean, if we're speaking about the big players, it's going to be most likely Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, maybe Ripple if you into that, right? So if you leave them as collateral, it's all good, but for you to borrow capital, you're going to pay interest, right? And in most cases, the interest that you earn by lending out your assets and keeping them as collateral are very small, and in 90% of the cases they will not cover your borrowing costs. So you borrowing capital, you will be paying the borrowing interests. Usually those are really small in comparison to what you are able to generate. So I mean, to borrow stable coins, usually you're going to be paying between 6 to 10, maybe 12% a year, more or less. Sometimes it goes up and down because it's also dynamic, right, based on the utilization rate of the pools. So essentially, but you want to be checking across multiple protocols and multiple assets, because remember, if you keep your ETH as collateral, you are able to borrow any asset that the protocol supports. So maybe borrowing USDC is expensive, let's say a 10% a year interest, but USDT is 7%, or maybe DAI, for example, stablecoin DAI is at 3%. So you can borrow any asset that is the cheapest one to borrow and just convert the borrowed money back to USDC or USDT, whatever you need for the LP, and just use it there. But you want to be borrowing as cheaply as possible, so you can borrow any asset, just not volatile ones, because you can mess up badly with that if it goes up. Any stablecoin that is the cheapest one to borrow, and then simply convert it back to USDC or USDT and use it elsewhere. Use it to play around DeFi, deploy capital, build cash flow, right? And then you can essentially, once you want to be repaying the debt or something, you swap USDC or USDT back to that stablecoin that you borrowed and repay the loan. Simple as that. So this is a very crucial video and question to understand before you execute into those liquidity pools. Okay, so just to summarize, if you want to be holding your assets no matter what, if you don't want to be selling them, borrow against them and use the borrowed capital to play around and build cash flow. If you don't care, if you just have cryptos and you want to be building cash flow from that and you don't care about the ratios you're going to get back, then you can simply deploy assets right away. Simple as that. So you don't need to borrow against them, right? Unless you want to. So that's the video, that's the explanation. And of course, in DeFi House, I will be going extremely deep into the strategies, how to borrow, when to borrow, which assets, what kind of pools to open for fast growth, for stable growth, for exponential growth using compounding, etc., etc. So of course, there are multiple things that you can do, but the core underlying structure should be very clear for you. It's either you don't touch your assets, you borrow against them and simply use that capital, or you don't care about the ratios and anything, you just have some amount of crypto and you want to be building cash flow from that amount, then it's best to deploy straight into the LPs, directly the assets, and not borrow against them. Okay, so that's the core topic for this video. So hopefully it will be beneficial and will make you think and answer these questions, and you will be able to make easier and better decisions when deploying into the liquidity pool. So once again, thank you, and of course, as always, I will see you on a next video.